Good morning. It is Monday, December 5th, 2022, and this is DC Signal to Noise. Since we last talked, the Environmental Protection Agency released proposed renewable volume obligations for 2023, 24, 25. Bio-based diesel supporters are not happy with the proposal. China has decided to ease COVID restrictions. I think this one gets an again. I think anyway. Cyclone volleyball made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament before getting knocked out. Men's and women basketball are in the top 25 at the same time. And former Cyclone Brock Purdy stepped in under center for the 49ers and helped to beat the Dolphins. Welcome. I am AgriTalk host Chip Flory. That is Jim Wiesemeyer, Pro Farmer Policy Analyst. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, and a shout out to two areas where I gave speeches last week, actually one this weekend, Chip. The FCS Financial Group, it was young farmers and beginning farmers, and boy, that restored my faith in our ag sector.
Oh,
Some
good.
very sharp relatively newer producers, more women than I think I've ever seen at a meeting, by the way. So,
Really?
yeah, and a lot of Signal to Noise listeners there. And then over the weekend, I spoke at the 100th year anniversary of the Mississippi Farm Bureau. They had a trade show and they made catfish right on the spot, which I love catfish. And of course,
Amen to that.
yeah, and the great Mississippi pork producers also made pork right there, and it was excellent.
That's outstanding. Hey, listen, I had a great weekend. I had our first Christmas celebration of the year. Had our immediate family, which included some prime rib, some smoked prime rib, I mean, it was an awesome weekend. But that sounds pretty doggone good to me. What you had?
Oh, and I haven't had catfish for a while, and I mean, it comes out of the grill. I think they told me only 4 to 5 minutes it takes,
Yeah.
and I mean, I sat there for a while and talked to them, and I talked to the rice growers there, the cotton
Yeah.
exhibit. It was just a good time, and 100 years is something to celebrate for,
Oh, you darn right.
yeah.
That's right. That's right. Hey, I do have to mention, do you know why it's important that Brock Purdy stepped in and for the 49ers and helped to win that game against the Dolphins?
What's on?
Because Brock Purdy is the 2022 NFL drafts Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last player picked in the 2022 draft. And he's looking mighty important for the 49ers right now.
Never give up, right?
Never
give up.
absolutely.
Just have to have that chance.
Yep. All right, bud. Let's get to it. We've got a lot of ground that we need to cover in today's Signal to Noise. And I do want to start with some of the items from last week. And at the top of the list, I think, from last week is EPA's proposals for the renewable volume obligations under the RFS. The ethanol, corn-based ethanol side seems encouraged by the proposed volume obligations. The bio-based diesel groups, not so much.
It's a lot like the Federal Reserve comments on interest rates when Powell spoke last week, Chip. The bears thought he would be more hawkish, and he wasn't. And I think that's what happened to the EPA RFS announcement. The advanced biofuels, of which renewable diesel is a big part of, they must have had much larger expectations because looking at the 23 versus the previous year, it's the proposal is up 3.4%. The next year up 13.7%, and the following year up 12.2%. On the surface, those are nice increases, but they wanted more because of the significant expansion that you've talked about in AgriTalk over the past year or so of soybean oil processing, facilities, either expanded or new facilities. And EPA kind of their commentary, they said as of February, the renewable diesel capacity was 1.5 billion gallons, but they had more up-to-date information from the same source that they cited, the EIA, of a 2.0 billion gallon capacity. So I'm curious as to why they didn't use the most up-to-date information.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Kurt Kavorik from the Clean Fuels Alliance is going to be on AgriTalk this morning. So we'll get Kurt's take on why that might be the case going forward. Here's the deal, Jim. A lot of the reaction that I'm seeing from the biodiesel side makes me think that the mandate is still viewed as a ceiling rather than a floor of use. There is no reason to assume, again, my opinion, that the investment in the biodiesel, or excuse me, in the renewable diesel and the sustainable aviation fuel markets is not going to continue just because of these RVOs. The the decision and the investment has already been made when it comes to renewable diesel and SAF. I I just don't think that this is going to be anything that will slow it down.
I agree with you there. However, EPA took almost every opportunity to say, well, a number of these facilities won't be followed through because of lack of procurement. So I think that they went out of their way to lower expectations, Jeff. I don't know whether this has anything relative to their call for public comment on food versus fuel relative to biofuels. But I think really the market should be looking outside of EPA and toward like the California standards and a number of other states
Yeah.
following California. That's point one. And two, you mentioned it's the sustainable aviation fuel. As this carbon credit continues to mature, the airlines are going to need those credit offsets, and that's where sustainable aviation fuel will really kick off. Not right away, but
Yeah.
it won't be long before that kicks in.
Okay. Now, some of the concern that I got from longtime supporters of the RFS, I mean, these people were in key positions when the RFS was being written in 2005, 2007. Their concern is that the way that it is set up now with the cellulosic, you mentioned the cellulosic ethanol requirements in there, that really what is happening is the the credit support for corn-based ethanol is getting thinned out because there will be other credits available from other. There's a lot of players in the market now, Jim,
Yeah.
way more than what there was in 2007. And with all these new players taking advanced credits or RINs, that's a multiplier effect, and it thins out the market then for the corn-based ethanol.
Yes.
Yes, no?
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. And it answers the, at least from those users who were complaining about either a shortage of RINs or RINs prices were too high.
Yeah.
So I think meandering through the hundreds of pages of these proposals, I think that they're kind of masking some of the reasons why they want to put a governor on RIN prices.
Okay. E-RINs.
E-RINs.
Yes. This just it's what a convoluted, complex effort that this is going to be to try to track the who. Well, it says the equipment manufacturer is going to be eligible to receive the RIN, but tracking renewable natural gas production that is used to make electricity that eventually makes its way into the battery of an EV vehicle to go up and down the road before it can qualify for the RIN.
Yeah. They're deferring. Remember when former USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue early on, now he became educated when he said, he just didn't understand the RIN markets. Well,
Yeah.
this is amplified now. This is amplified now with e-RINs. Now,
Yes.
I've had a number of emails from traders, analysts, company people can this be changed? Because, these are
Yeah.
proposals and they have until way later in the summer. The public comment period ends February 10th. I can almost guarantee you that that's going to be extended at least
Right.
another month. So
Right.
there is time, although history shows, Chip, and I wrote about it this morning on Pro Farmer, EPA doesn't usually vary, if all that much, from its initial proposals. But there is a chance
But
here.
these are so different. I mean, they're stretching. They're stretching on these proposals. I think there's a greater opportunity to have an influence to change the proposals than what there normally is on the RVOs.
I agree, and especially looking at EPA's justification for their decisions on
Yeah.
the renewable diesel capacity. They're already out of date. So I
Yeah.
think that they can be convinced. And Valero, some people are telling me their facility has been accelerated by at least 6 months. So I've got to look into that to see that could be even more additional capacity. But EPA kind of doused the capacity indication, and I just think they're flat out wrong.
Gotcha. EPA has set February 10 as the comment deadline. There is a hearing on the RFS proposals on January 10th, and has pledged to finalize the final rule by June 14th of 2023. So the timeline is already starting to tick. Real quick, find your comments tab on your screen. You can click on that and be part of the conversation if you've got any questions or have any comments for us. We've got several that have chimed in. We'll get to that question from Gary here before too long, Jim, just so that you know. Year-round availability of E15, that was another hot topic last week. There's opportunity and, in my mind, some concerns about year-round availability of E15, but it seems to have momentum, doesn't it?
Well, now you've got the API and some others also in support of it. So, I mean, why not do it, Chip? I mean, so this could be an add-on to the omnibus spending bill between now and the end of the year. So I'm looking to that to see if it has some progress up on Capitol Hill.
So the American Petroleum Institute, as you just said, has signed on this and said, "Yep, this is something that we can support." So you have to ask the question, why? Why, and I've had some, well, it's the right thing to do. No, you got to follow the money on it, right? To figure out why they want to do why they would support it. Remember that when E10 first came on the market, at the pump, it was 89 octane.
Yes.
Okay. And then because the minimum octane standard at the pump was 87 octane, what the refiners decided to do was lower the grade of their blend stock, spike it with 10% ethanol, which is always 113 octane, spike it with that 10% ethanol to get it to 87 octane. So it went from 89 octane to 87 octane. E15 is now on the market at 88 octane. So it's a selling point. It's a higher octane product at a lower price. How long is it until we see an 87 octane E15 at the pump?
Yeah. Well, I'll just answer it this way. API is led now by Mike Summers. I know Mike Summers, and he knows agriculture, by the way. That's where he was the ag person at the White House before.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that helped bring a little more balance to APA on this one. And they see that although it looks like strange bedfellows, there's win-wins in this relative to both refiners and the biofuels industry. And I think he's brought the industry along. So I think the odds now slightly favor this being part of the omnibus budget bill. And if that's the case, then we've got another check mark for the possible growth of biofuels.
Yep. Okay. I mentioned it at the start of the show, but China has decided to again ease its COVID restrictions.
Well, I had a line in my morning report that, when the Chinese were watching the World Soccer matches, they saw all these people.
Yeah.
And I mean that they're thinking themselves, what about us?
Yeah.
Everybody around the world is gathering and watching sports events, and we can't even leave our abode.
Right.
So I think, and plus, then you've got the Apple, of which the iPhone now is extending their wait times because of the tremendous leverage China had on the production of iPhones. So Apple is accelerating plans to move a lot of their production facilities to Vietnam and India. So there's Xi and others in China are seeing the economic potential of this really increasing. So yes, it is a continuation of the COVID adjustments.
Okay.
They're changing, and there's no going back once they open up now.
Oh no.
A
No.
COVID shift.
As you said, the World Cup has proven that.
Yes.
Once it opens up, there is no going back. Jim, developments over the weekend. Real quick comment from Russell Richardson. I think this is very good. E15 has an identification issue. Some stations call it E15, some unleaded 88, and I've seen some other names. Can we get behind a universal label? I think usage would increase if that happened. Very good. Very excellent.
Consistency is always a plus. Absolutely. I agree with you, Russell.
Yep. Really good. And we'll get to you yet, Gary. Over the weekend, Jim, a lot of it has to do with oil supplies, whether it be from Russia or from OPEC, as far as the developments that I saw, and some restrictions on imports of Russian oil into some key areas.
Yeah, initially it had, at least I haven't looked, last half hour. It's had both WTI, U.S. crude, and Brent crude, international crude higher. This is a ongoing thing that a number of analysts told me, Chip, over the weekend that they think Russia will have maneuvers to skirt some of the negative impacts on their operation. Plus, Russia says they won't sell any oil to nations who subscribe to this plan. So I think we're just you have to wait to see the market implications. Ukraine's president has already said they didn't set the level. It's $60 a barrel with some adjustments every so many months. They didn't set it right. So you've got some discord about this plan already.
Okay. Surprise, right?
Well, whenever time you try to control a market, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Exactly. The other one is it looks like President Biden is ready to start replacing the SPR supplies.
Yes, and that was interesting last week. That they're getting more negative comments than they thought. So yeah, I think that's a one that he wants to get for the future. He doesn't want to have us vulnerable, to have those stocks very low. They're at the lowest level in many years.
Right. Okay.
And by the way, their polling of the SPR, gallonage, they count that as U.S. production of oil, by the way, which I think masks the true situation of the U.S. oil production. So I think that's an unfair thing to do.
Well, it's already been counted once as production.
Yes,
I'm sure when it went into the SPR.
Yeah, well, it's the ways of Washington. Noise.
Yep. All right. So Congress is in session this week. They've got a long list of things that they need to get done. Let's start with the fiscal year 23 funding. What's the status there?
They're actually talking now, both political parties, where they hadn't been before. They got to come up with the total number first. And you've got more than a few conservative Republicans are saying, here we go again. You've got the Wall Street Journal saying that as well. But Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Republicans in the Senate, favors an omnibus spending bill because he just wants it done, Jim. Mm-hmm. And I think the Democrats do too, because the Republicans will control the House in the next Congress next year. So bottom line, I think the odds clearly favor a huge omnibus spending bill. What that level is remains to be seen, but it's the typical battle between defense spending for the Republicans and some social spending, on the Democratic side. But as I said before, watch your add-ons. In particular, agriculture is really watching and promoting an extension of the Emergency Relief Program, ERP, formerly WIP Plus. And I think that they're going to get it with maybe some changes for 2022 eligible crops and livestock relative to being more farmer friendly, especially the way USDA was going to operate phase 2 of the ERP for 20 and 21, because it got into tax issues. Wherever I go in my speeches now, a number of farmers will come up to me and say, why does my FSA office want to see all my tax information? And that has hit home with a lot of producers.
Yeah. Well, when we talked with Paul Neefer about it last week, he thinks that you can't call it a non-starter because they did try to start it, but they're going to have to pull that process back. There's no way that that's going to go forward.
Yeah, it was about to be announced, Chip, and they pulled it back because I was in a meeting in which a USDA official did not give details, but she said it was about to be announced. So the press release was written, and they pulled it back because they heard from Senator Hoeven and other senators and representatives, because both political parties, that they were getting heat. Don't you do it this way?
Yeah. Senator Bozeman was in on some of that as well. We're going to have him on the show tomorrow, Jim. He will be on AgriTalk.
Good. Ask him what they're going to do for the beleaguered rice producer relative to both the Farm Bill and their continue. I'm going to be at the USA Rice Federation this Friday giving a speech. I think I've done it 12 years in a row, and they're forlorn right now, even though they've had a recent uptick in prices, but they were really hit by the fertilizer chip, and their acres are going down.
Yeah.
And the industry is concerned about that. As well they should.
Okay. Let's see. We talked about the E15. Oh, the WRDA, the measure, the Water Resource Development Act. What's the status here?
Well, it is the administration and both political parties know that gets a lot of votes, because they know the value of our water system, which makes that continues to make U.S. agriculture competitive. They're attaching the National Defense Authorization, which is very important to put on, and that'll be attached this week. So that tells you the importance. It isn't a question whether WRDA is going to pass now that the defense authorization is on there. Now we got to look at the details, because it's important on some of the percentage of the funding, Chip, relative to our waterway system. And I don't want to get too wonky on you, but the Senate bill showed some more percentage increases that would be maintained for the water system. So I want to see the final language, because they worked it out last week between the House and the Senate.
Okay. All right. What's this? An Electoral Count Act will clear Congress.
Well, you saw the repercussions when Trump and some of his colleagues tried to change the process of the electoral voting after the election that he lost in 2020. This one is supported by both Democrats and Republicans to make it clearer that you really can't alter it, Chip.
Okay.
So I think that's going to be clear, and it'll pass. It'll pass.
Okay. Looks like there is some legislation, HR 3648, that is on the agenda for this week that is going to address some green card issues.
That gets into the sensitive area. Yep. Now, in my current speeches, I'm saying, look, next year, most people are saying, there'll be gridlock because you've got the Republicans controlling the House and the Democrats controlling the Senate. I'm not quite so sure. I think both political parties are at least, and we'll know within the first 6 months of 2023 whether or not I'm right. I think that they're going to get the centrist and others in both political parties, as opposed to the extremes of both political parties, the far right in the Republican Party and the far left in the Democrats, in order to get anything done. One of the things that could happen, that most people tell me it won't happen, which gives me comfort that it may, is immigration reform.
Yeah.
The Republicans need border security. Now the Democrats are starting to come around with the White House. So if they can get border security, then the Democrats can get immigration reform, such as the green card, the DACA people, etc. So I think that that's give and take, and that's where you historically that's what was done in Congress, and we lost that, where both political parties want everything.
Right.
They want, if they don't get it, then they vote no. So we could see a possible change for the better.
All right. Outside of the spending bill, we've also got the debt issue to consider. What's the status there?
We won't really hit it till the second half of next year. So that means that any talk that you hear that they're going to change, either increase the debt limit or suspend it, is just noise. It's not going to happen this year. Now, although the Democrats wanted to put it in as part of the lame duck session of Congress we're in, the Republicans think they're going to have more leverage next year when they control the House. So that's a battle to be held later on, Chip. But our $31 trillion debt, we can no longer grow our way out of that, because something's going to have to be done. But the debt limit's going to have to be, it's money already spent. So the argument is, come on. And eventually it's always either suspended, the debt limit, or increased. We have to take these paths to get there.
Right. Okay. Rapid fire on a couple of issues that are also going to be taken up this week. More funding for Ukraine.
Yeah, but the Republicans are saying they don't support a blank check anymore. They want a little more questions of how this money is being used, both militarily and aid. So that's a question mark, Chip, on the details.
All right, energy permitting.
Sometimes centrist Joe Manchin is probably going to not be happy. I don't see that. Remember, he signed off on this Inflation Reduction Act bill after getting a promise that they would take up his permitting bill. He's not going to get it.
Okay. Looks there is a Senate Ag Committee Farm Bill hearing on the agenda for tomorrow.
Agricultural research, and I've got a chart on Pro Farmer today from the USDA Economic Research Service that shows over the last few years, both China and the European Union spending more for public ag research than the United States is. That has to change, because research, both at the public and the private level, it continues at the private level. But at the public level, we're going down, and that is a negative sign, Chip, because research has been one of our competitive advantages over the decades.
Okay. Potentially at the top of the list of things to watch for the week ahead, we've got the runoff race down in Georgia.
Yeah, Herschel, most of the polls show that Warnock, the Democratic incumbent, is ahead anywhere from 1 to 3 percentage points. Herschel Walker got a little over 200,000 fewer votes than the governor did, the Republican governor. So that tells you he's got some problems with independents, and even within some Republicans who split the ticket. So I'm not saying he can't win, but they're going to have to really you'll get out the vote. And you notice that President Trump has not been down there physically, and I think he was told, and he actually listened. He was told not to personally campaign.
Exactly. And this vote matters. We know that the Senate already has, or that the Democrats already have control of the Senate, but this vote matters because right now on the committees, it's split power.
Yes.
At a 50-50. If it goes 51-49, then it's the Democrats calling 100% of the shots on what gets taken up, correct?
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
voted within the committee for
Yeah.
personnel nominations in the committee, all that. Yes, it is. It is very important. Yes, not as important as if on control of the chamber,
Oh, no.
but important nonetheless.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. From Gary Rasmussen. Jim, what's your take on Elon's document dump on Twitter's censorship? Will it go anywhere in DC? And I don't know about this. I'm going to have to figure out exactly what this one is. But James Wood's lawsuit is intriguing, by the way. It could have some merit.
I'd have to look into that, but I will tell you the dump and the leaks that Elon gave relative to the discussions that Twitter had relative to Biden's son is really shows you the bias that Twitter, before Elon Musk bought them, unfolded, and it's a horrible day for journalism.
Yep.
That what we're seeing and hearing. We suspected it, but now this is proof, and so I applaud Elon from
Yep.
trying to get as much truth into our system as possible.
Yeah. I haven't had a chance to look at it all, of course, but just skimming some of what has been released and some of the emails that were shared between Twitter censors and some of those in the Democrat Party and some of the conflicted states. Arizona is the one that's I'm thinking of right off the bat. It just looks like it looks like clear cut censorship in favor of Democrats over Republicans in that Arizona 2020 Arizona vote.
It's
It
just a
just
sad
does.
day. It's a
Yeah.
sad testimony to the system. And you notice CBS News just recently, I think it was last week, finally came out and said that that laptop on Biden's son was legit. They
Yeah.
knew what was going to come out relative to the
Yeah.
freedom, messages now that Elon Musk owns them. So it's just, I think the word is disgusting on our fourth estate.
Jim, you have a great week. All right.
Sure.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget today on AgriTalk, Machinery Pete and Kurt Kovarik from Clean Fuels Alliance. And this afternoon on AgriTalk, we're going to be talking cotton with Darren Hudson from Texas Tech. Have a great week. Keep watching for those signals.